Hello, everybody. My name is Carly Knapp, and my husband Josh and I are so thankful to be able to be a part of the Senior Bible Quizzing community, and specifically here in the Detroit Metro District. So today in this little clip, we're going to talk about the different types of questions that there are in Bible quizzing. So it may seem somewhat straightforward, but maybe some of it's a little bit more complex. So I'm just going to kind of go through these. Now, some of these questions that are here are from different materials that are, when I wrote this a couple of years ago, may not be the study that we're doing this particular year, but that's okay. You'll still get the idea. So first of all, there is what's called a direct question. Now, just to back up, this is, of course, when you're in the middle of a quiz, the quiz master is reading questions to you, and he or she will say, question number one, and give the type of the question. And so this is important because when you're the quizzer and you're answering the question, you want to know how many questions are being asked, so therefore you know how many answers to give in order to get it correct. So we're just going to kind of go through some of these, and hopefully this will be helpful for you in your practice. So the first type is just a direct question or a one-part question, and typically when you hear one of these, they don't say what kind of question it is. You just assume and know that it's a direct because they don't say anything different. So one example for this would be, that a direct question is one question with one answer. So here's an example. Question number 1 is worth 10 points. Question. According to James chapter 1, verse 1, who is mentioned? So the question is who, that's one question, and the answer is James. That is the answer. Okay, here's the second type, a two-part question. This is where there are two questions and two answers. An example, question number 11 is a two-part question worth 20 points. Question. What is spoken of throughout what, according to Romans chapter 1, verse 9? So there are two questions, what and what, and then the answer is your faith and the whole world. Pretty easy so far, right? All right, the next type is a three-part question. You can see where this is going, and this is where there are 3 questions and 3 answers. An example, question number 9 is a 3-part question worth 20 points. Question. In the verse that contains the word uncorruptible and the word corruptible, who is described as uncorruptible, who is described as corruptible, and what is this verse? So there's your 3 questions. So the answer is 1, the uncorruptible God. Second answer, corruptible man. And the verse is Romans chapter 1, verse 23. Just think, if we were studying Romans, you would have some of the answers to the questions already. All right, so this can go on to have 4 parts, 5 parts, 6 parts. This is an example of a 4-part question. So 4 questions and 4 answers. Question number 12 is a 4-part question worth 20 points. Question. Romans chapter 1, verse 29 refers to being filled with how many different things, what are they, and being full of how many different things, and what are they? So there's your 4 questions. The answer is 5 things, and the first answer is 5 things. The second answer is all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, and maliciousness. The third answer is 5 things, and those are, for the 4th answer, envy, murder, debate, deceit, and malignity. All right, so that's the multiple type questions. Then we have what's called a quotation completion. And basically what a quotation completion type question is where the verse is started, and then the quizzer needs to quote the rest of the verse perfectly, starting from the very beginning of the verse. Now, in this type of question, you do not give the reference or the location of the verse. You only quote the verse itself. Here's an example. Question number 16 is a quotation completion question worth 20 points. Question. Who, knowing the judgment, and the quizmaster would stop, then the quizzer would hit and answer by basically quoting the verse, and they would say, who, knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. And that would be the answer for that question. Now, of course, on a quotation type question at all, and we'll talk about a couple others here, it is important that the verse is quoted precisely. And this is through the King James Version. So it's not the essence, where some of the questions you can give the essence of what the verse is asking for. When it is a quotation type question, you have to know and quote it exactly as the King James Version says it. And that just brings fairness so that the judges can look at it and say, yes, that's exactly what it says, or no, they didn't quote it based off the King James Version. So make sure when you're learning that you put those S's and know if it's a thee or a thou. Okay, so that's quotation completion. The next type is a quotation question. So basically the difference between a quotation completion and a quotation question is a quotation completion always starts at the beginning of the verse and has you finish it, whereas a quotation question gives you a small part of the verse or the location of the verse, or reference we call it, or sometimes a unique phrase that's in multiple verses is given. And so basically what you're supposed to do then is to quote the verse correctly without any mistakes and without any stumbling. And again, just like the quotation completion, you do not give the reference on it. So here is an example of a quotation question. So question number 4 is a quotation question worth 10 points question. Mutual faith is mentioned in only one verse of our study. Quote this verse. So that's the question. And the key word there is mutual faith. And those two words are only in one verse of this entire study. So the quizzer is going to know exactly what verse it is that they're asking them to quote, even though it doesn't tell them where it's been located. The answer then is just quoting the verse without giving the reference, and it is, that I may be comforted together with you by the mutual faith both of you and me. All right, the next type is a cross-reference question. And a cross-reference question just means that the answer comes from more than one verse. So the references you can kind of think of it as like there's sort of a lattice work that they're pulling from this one and from this one. So the answer comes from more than one verse, and it can be combined with either the 2 parts, the 3 parts, the 4 parts, or any type of quotation question as well. Now, you don't see a cross-reference quotation completion question, however, but you would see a cross-reference quotation. So here's an example of that one. Question number 16 is a cross-reference question worth 20 points question. Grace is mentioned in which 2 verses of Romans chapter 1? So that's the question, and the answer comes from 2 separate verses, and that's Romans chapter 1 verses 5 and Romans chapter 1 verse 7. Here's another example of a cross-reference question. Question number 18 is a quotation cross-reference question worth 30 points question. Quote the 3 consecutive verses of Romans chapter 1 that name Jesus Christ. So the quizzer is going to know in their mind that there's only 3 verses in the entire study of Romans that have the words Jesus Christ named consecutively, one after the other. So the answer is, among whom also ye are the called of Jesus Christ, grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for you all, that your faith is spoken of throughout the whole world. All right, those are the basic types of questions, but there's a couple other things to just know generally about quizzing vernacular, and that is some common question words. So I'm just going to go over these here briefly. You may already know them, and if you do, you can just fast forward, which is okay. So the first one is preceding. You hear that a lot, which of course means coming directly before. Following, coming directly after. Consecutive means one right after the other. So if they're talking about consecutive verses, it's verse 1, 2, and 3. Locate, that means give the reference or the location where the verse is found in the Bible. Recorded, it just means found in or mentioned in that particular verse. Mentioned, of course, means spoken of. Contains, it has it in there. Described means it's explained as. According means it's found in or mentioned in that particular verse. And then refers to, speaks of, or mentions in that particular verse or passage. And of course, they're just the main question words of who, what, when, why, where, and how. So you want to make sure you have your ears attuned to make sure you are looking for those particular words which are in there. So that's pretty much a summary of the types of questions that you may find. One other thing just generally to know about questions is the earlier they are in the quiz, the 10-point type questions are going to be more simplistic, usually one answer or a short answer. The 20-pointers are going to grow a little bit in difficulty and maybe have some more that's required in order to have it. And then the 30 pointers, of course, are going to be the most difficult of them all. So hope this helps. Of course, let us know if you have any questions. All right, God bless.